So I've been on the lookout on the internet again to see what days are coming up, and Google says National Cat Day is the 17th of February, so I've got a cat related craft. But on further digging, there's different National Cat Days or International Cat Days, so maybe it's February, maybe it's October, who knows, but I think every day is a cat day if you want it to be. So today I'm going to be trying to felt this cute little guy. So this is a set that I got off of Shein. I've done a little bit of felting before, but not for quite a while, so let's open it up and see what we get inside. Okay, so it looks like what we have from first inspection is the felt itself, or the felting wool. These are felting needles. I'm not sure how well the camera will pick it up, but the ends of these have barbs on them, which is what makes the felt connect together as you start stabbing it. And then these look like their little eyes and maybe a keyring, but I'm not sure I'll be making them into a keyring, but I'll attempt to use the eyes. And then we've got instructions. So they seem like sort of generic instructions, and then I think these are the instructions specifically to make this cat. And then we have this block of foam, which we'll be using to stab the needle into. It just makes sure that you don't stab yourself or your desk. So let's get started. So I've had a quick read of the instructions, and one thing I did think was interesting is that number 1 on the generic instructions is saying that it's easy to break the needles, and if they do break, it's not because of the quality of the needles, but of the quality of the method. So they're blaming the user already if the needles do break. We'll see if that happens. The first thing I need to do is get this orange wool and ball it into roughly the right sort of shape for the cat, and then you stick the needle in repeatedly, and it sort of firms up the wool and makes it form together into a felt. So I'm just going to unpack this wool. And the instructions also say to keep comparing it to the one-to-one drawing of the cat, which I think is this. So I think this will eventually be this size, and that gives you some idea of how compacted it gets. So I'm going to sort of roll this roughly into a cat-like ball shape. And then I need to grab some of the needles. I do need to save a little bit of this wool for the ears, so I'm just going to rip a bit off. And I think I also need a teeny bit to go over the ball once I've done needling it. Fine. And then this is the ball that we're left with. So I'm going to try and make it neatish. And there we go. Looks a bit like a guinea pig already. So then I just get this needle and stab it all the way through the wall into the foam, and at first it doesn't feel like it's doing anything, but eventually it will start to harden up the sort of middle of the wall. Be careful to keep my fingers out of the way. As I said, these needles are barbed, so if they do go into your finger, they really hurt and they're hard to get out. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep stabbing this needle until it gets to a slightly firmer cat shape. I make sure to constantly flip and rotate the fur ball to compact every single part of the cat. I occasionally squeeze the ball to reshape it and better match the picture. I also paid extra attention to the edges of the shape and tried to round them out as much as possible. In total, this took well over an hour, and it still wasn't quite as compact as the picture. I'm relatively happy with this sort of sausage shape that we've got at the moment. It's definitely a lot firmer than the original fluff, but now what I need to do apparently is cover it in a thin layer of the fluff and just gently felt the fluff in so that the cat ends up looking fluffy. And then we can add the ears, the tail, the feet, the face, and all the orange stripes. As you can see, it's definitely bigger than the one-to-one picture, but I would be here stabbing it probably all week to get it to this size, and I'm happy enough with this one. So I'm going to go ahead and cover it in a thin layer of the felt that I put to one side, and hopefully it will make it look a bit less like felt and a bit more like fur. Fluffier now, slightly already looks a bit too square, but I think that'll be fine. Now what I need to do is make the ears and the legs and attach them onto the body, and the tail as well. So it does it in a bit of an odd order, because it says to add the ears, then add the face, then add the stripes, then add the legs. So I might try and follow this, but I'm not sure this is the best way to do it. But I'm gonna pre-make all the legs, the tail and the ears now, which is basically this, just on a teeny tiny scale. For the ears, I've made these sort of firm bits and then left a sort of tail of fluff, which is apparently how I'm going to attach it to the head. They're roughly the same size, they're not exactly the same, but I think that's fine. So I'm gonna place these on, which side do I think is the best side? This one. Place them on here and needle in these loose tufts, and that should be enough to keep these ears attached. And this is it with the ears. I'm going to have to do the same and make the little sausages for the legs and the tail, and leave sort of tails on them so that I can attach them to the cat. So for the legs, ears and tail, I just grab a small amount of the wool and stab them to firm them up, and tried to get them roughly the right shape. Got all the feet done, and I attached the tail, forgetting that I meant to put the stripes on first. I'll go back to these instructions, and I also need to make a little nose and some little sort of mouth balls. I don't know a better way to phrase that. And then after I make these little balls, I can start putting the stripes on. So not sure how they'll look, considering this is a bit furrier than the picture, but we'll make these and then start placing on some stripes. The smaller sections for the mouth were definitely more fiddly. It also highlighted the downside of the foam. Basically, whenever you push the needle into the foam, a small amount of wool would go too, meaning it was difficult to get a smooth end result. The first thing that we put onto the face is these little eyes, and so I'm going to take the eyes out of this bag. So it says to sort of poke a hole in the face with this needle as sort of a guide hole for where you want the eyes to be. So I think about there and about there. Slightly concerned that I haven't stabbed this enough to make it firm enough to push into, but I think that's in there. And now do the other one. There's nothing really keeping these in, so I might end up putting a little dab of glue just to keep these in place. So I think I'll do that, but for now, using those eyes, we can put the tiny little nose in place. I'm going to try to give it a sort of nose shape. And then we attach these little balls for the cat's mouth. And there we have most of the face. I'll just put a blob of glue on and put the eyes back in now. And it looks kind of cat-like. So now I just need to add the stripes, and then I think the whiskers are the last thing to go on. So to add the stripes, all I need to do is get some of this darker coloured fluff and lay it out roughly where I think a stripe should be, and then stab it in a little bit. So I'm going to roughly try to follow this sort of guide, but we'll see how it goes. I found that when making the stripes, it was easier to roll the wool into little sausages between my fingers before trying to attach it to the body. It compacted the wool just a little bit, meaning less stabbing time was needed, and it stayed in place better. I definitely should have added the stripes to the tail before attaching the tail. It was a little bit fiddly to add them on afterwards, but I managed. I actually enjoyed this part of adding the stripes. It felt like it was finally starting to come together, and I did look at the picture to try and match them up, but this is just going to be a unique stripe pattern. None of my legs ended up the same size, but I think it worked out fine, and it doesn't really need to stand up on them anyway. Okay, so for the whiskers, they only give you one whisker, so I'm not quite sure how this is meant to work, or if I meant to cut this into 4 and then poke it in the side of the face, which I think is what we're meant to do. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Half and half again, roughly. It's very far off half. It says poke holes and fix black fishing line to the sides of cat's face as a mustache. So poked a hole and push the whisker in. So I guess that's okay. And then so this is complete. The legs are not exactly how they're meant to look, and the tail, I definitely should have put the stripes on before I attached it, but quite happy with this. I might just go ahead and add a few extra finishing touches that I think will make this guy unique. Added some, well, attempts at teeny tiny toe beans and a cute little cat butt. So I haven't got a name for this guy yet. Leave your suggestions in the comments below. Overall, I think he came out okay. I definitely needed to make the body a bit firmer because he's still got quite a lot of squidge in him. But this is quite a good craft. It's pretty mindless. You can just be watching TV or Netflix or something as you do it. And I think this kit was actually worth it. So here's the expectation and here's the reality. Definitely beginner level here, and definitely use the error why it didn't end up like the picture. I think that you could actually get something quite close to this if you had a bit more patience and a bit more expertise than I do. Let me know in the comments below if you've tried felting and how you found it. You can also do sort of flat felting where you make a landscape or sort of a painting but in felt, which I think is quite cool. And if you have any extra hints or tips, also leave them in the comments below for anyone else that might want to give this a go. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.